I'd say I think probably the biggest thing is you have to like make sure you never stop learning. That'd probably be the biggest thing I could tell anyone. Um, I still once you start feeling like you're a big fish, that's kind of when I start getting kind of worried. I was working here in the industry in New York for a lot, and then once I walked into ILM, that's when I went back down to a junior. Like that's how I felt. I was like brand new person, and so that's at least at school, you always kind of want to learn, and it's always changing. The software's always changing. Your techniques are everything's always changing. So you have to be happy with change. You have to change is good. I always say. So anything everything that's evolving, you kind of have to keep that open mind, and that's the biggest thing I came out of SVA, because at work, I'm still learning, there's definitely things I don't know. There's people there that from all the way from ET, they're still there learning and still pushing hard. And you see someone at that caliber that's still like, oh, I just heard that this new program came out, I'm gonna learn it. I'm like, man, you've been in the industry for like 20 years and you still kind of like, I need to learn this and I need to learn that. That's inspiring, man. As an artist, man, you can't get stuck. You gotta keep going, you gotta keep learning. So that's what I got out of it.
The continuous learning thing is it's a little bit more than an obsession. That's your whole daily life. I mean, I have a book on me here. I fill all my daily sort of in between times with, I sort of fidget myself into a better artist, by trying to draw on the subway and all that stuff. But it is one of those things. It's true. You have to you can't. I mean, if I were just to graduate with the stuff I knew when I was in school and use those skills now, those programs don't even exist anymore. It's like completely obsolete. So how do you keep going? You have to keep learning. I do realize that one thing I took away from SVA is I feel like a lot of the core strength of why I could do what I could do comes from my traditional art training. The drawing and the sculpting stuff is really directly tied to the traditional skills. So I would say you can learn the new program, but more importantly, I want to hire like a better artist, and they'll always come up with like a better solution, or just know what to fix to make it look better. So I guess keep training yourself to be a better artist. I mean, also learn the new software, but the two things. So there you go.
Cool. Awesome. Now, in the computer art field, there are many paths to go. For you guys, you have texturing and sculpting, and I'm sure you dabble in other things. What drove you to those specific professions?
For computer art?
Yes.
Well, I'll be a good example of someone who didn't even know. I didn't even have a computer coming into computer art. Let alone I didn't know any programs. I didn't know Photoshop. I didn't know anything. I came in with a fine arts portfolio. I transferred from fine arts to computer art. I just came in with a bunch of oil paintings. Like, this is all I got, and they were like, yeah, sure, come in. And I thought it was just like they're trying to just fill a slot or something, And no, but once you learn, it's just like what Paul said. You come from traditionals, and you'll get people from photography. You get illustrators, and you'll even get engineers. People who come from like a tech industry who come into this industry, because there's just so much. It's just so diverse. But I specifically came from fine arts, and I didn't know anything. And it goes back to what Paul said. If you have that basis core, you know how to draw, you know how to paint. You at least have an eye. You're training. The software is just software. You just learn it. It's just tools. But it's what makes you different from everyone else is how you find a solution, how do you make things look better. So that's how I came from fine arts. Yeah.
Cool. And then texturing, like.
Well, that goes back to So because I came from painting and illustration. I really enjoyed the world of matte painting, which back in the day was, painting on glass to make the backgrounds, set extensions for cinema. But when I came in was the digital realm. I changed to texturing because in New York City there wasn't a lot of matte painting work, I'll be honest with that. And I started again, then I went into the more texturing, which is, making something look photoreal, an asset, whether it be a character or just something like a car, And then found that very interesting. Well, this goes back to when I was painting and illustrating, making sure it looks just as how I see in real life. And just, as years went on, now that's what I stuck to. And now, that's my job. I need to make sure that this building, this whatever, looks real, and that goes way back to like high school, and so, yeah.
So when I graduated, I mean, the SVA, the curriculum is like when I was around, well, I guess it still does. It sort of trains you to be more of a generalist. But also like I chose modeling because that was my strongest, what I'm strongest at. So I mean, it sort of came really naturally. The other stuff I could sort of force myself to do, but then if you're forcing yourself to do something all day long, and you're not going to be doing it that well, and other people won't think you're doing it very well either, and you suffer. So I stopped billing myself as a generalist, and I just started dropping out the things that I didn't like to do, and I didn't do well. So modeling comes from the drawing. I mean, the way I drew was pretty analytical about structure, so it wasn't that different for me. So I was able to just port that into modeling, and especially now with ZBrush, you could sculpt pretty much now the gap between when I first started, it was a lot more more abstract in terms of pushing points that you sort of had to visualize what it might turn into eventually. But now it's really like the gap between your skill and what you can do is really narrowing. If you could draw it, you could sculpt it. It sort of could turn it around. So it's very direct. So I feel like I was fortunate enough to follow through with it through the years that I was able to sort of be put on these more senior projects with sculpting. So now it's just very natural for me to just focus on that.
Awesome. So now to get on the big topic, Dr. Strange, how was your experience working on this massive film?
Well, I went from commercials, which was something that you'll do a character in like a week, to a huge blockbuster where you'll have an asset for like a month. So two things with that is you can either and I was trained to be really fast, so I would block something out really quick, and then I'll have like 3 extra weeks, which I was like, well, let's take advantage of this time to actually really push yourself to the next level and really get down to the detail. So I found that really good, because now, before I never had time, now I have all the time in the world. So now there's no excuse. I have to be good. I have to really push it hard, and there's no excuse for me not to be good. There's also, Doctor Strange is a very interesting show, because it's not really much of a texture supervisor on the show, so it was a little bit of all over the place. So we'll have, as you saw in the New York scene, you have a lot of that, all these chunks all over the place. What we ended up doing was, just very much like get everything blocked, because there's so much stuff to do, and then we'll reanimate them, and then whatever gets in shot, that gets pushed up another level. So you had to make sure you prepare all your assets to be as flexible as you can, because you'll never know if that chunk that you did that looks pretty good as a first pass suddenly becomes hero, and then you got to make sure you can be able to high res that up as much as you can right away, because it needs to be put into shot, to be re-rendered, to be seen on dailies the next day, and then they'll decide whether or not it's working, or they'll be like, you know what, no, we'll do chunk C now, and then now that becomes hero. So it taught me to really push my skills really high, but then also really, really focus on my pipeline. Make sure that it's as flexible and as powerful as it can be when it comes to the time where, of course, what will happen is they'll be like, nope, you know what? We don't want this one anymore. We'll switch it to another one. So that was I learned a lot.
So I will add to what Jesse said. If you notice that he talked about at any time switching it and then really designing your workflow, that is definitely like a advanced move. I feel like that's something that as you get to a certain stage, you have to sort of, your chess master a few steps forward to sort of, you don't know what's gonna happen, but you're sort of like in a stance where you can just strike back and sort of, deflect a punch and all that stuff. Doctor Strange was my second movie, second tour of duty at ILM. The first time I was there for Jurassic World, it was sculpting dinosaurs. So it was what I knew with more time budget. So it was I knew how to sculpt dinosaurs, and like sculpting skin was my specialty. So everything was like what I knew, but to the best I could do it. Doctor Strange, completely different thing. They were like, we want to do these characters, but guess what? They're wearing 6 or 7 levels of baggy, flowy stuff. The traditional thing, what they did was they did a 3D scan of the character. So if you 3D scan something, it turns it into like a statue. Like if you think about it like a stone statue of the blank thing. If you have one layer of clothing, that's great. Now that's the shape that we need, and I can just sort of remake that shape based off of the scan. But what if you have multiple layers and folds and all that stuff? So what happened was what I was given was basically a task that is not meant to be done by hand. Like you could do it, but it won't be that accurate. It'll sort of look accurate, but then if you change poses, flap it out, it's not going to be good. So So there was recently a new program that came out that is made for the fashion industry to make clothes. So I was like, actually, why not use this new technology to aid my attempt at this, to help me out on certain pieces. And if I can't get it to work, I'll do it the traditional by hand method. So it was like a dog chasing like a greyhound chasing a rabbit sort of thing. So as long as I didn't like fall behind too much, if this was faster, I'd do it the new way. So I kept with one piece after another. I would just kept refining and trying out this new software until I actually invented a way to make clothes for movies. Actually, I ended up teaching the team afterwards. Like, hey, this is groundbreaking. I can make clothes. I can make wrinkles. I can unfold it, fold it, and then I actually have a tutorial on Nomen just on this topic because I was able to sort of innovate a new method for doing it. So that was the first one with Jurassic World. It was like me doing what I knew. This one was like inventing a new one. So this is kind of pretty great. So
I could say that also this movie actually launched both of our tutorials.
Awesome, yeah, and check out their tutorials if you have a chance. They're pretty awesome. I've checked them out personally. So, also we have a demo reel, and we also have some behind the scene footage we'd like to show you as well. So yeah.